everybody, I am Ace Cooper and today I'm back with a brand new Doctor Who Series 12 video. Tomorrow is Easter Sunday, so I thought it would be appropriate to finally bring out my Series 12 Easter egg video. So I went around Twitter, I went around YouTube, I used my own sort of investigation stuff, went through Series 12 and tried to list as many Easter eggs, calls to the past that I could possibly think of. It's inevitable that I've missed some, obviously, so if I have missed any on this list, please do let me know in the comments, I'd love to have a read. But yeah, this is sort of a majority of the ones I could sort of pick up, the ones all you lot could pick up from, you know, what you posted on Twitter, YouTube, all that sort of stuff. I've tried to compile as much as I can to break down all the little Easter eggs, and hopefully you will find something in this video that you potentially missed when you first watched a Series 12 episode. So without any further ado, we're going to get into episodes 1 and 2, Spyfall. The episode starts off with multiple different scenes taking place in different countries. We have a little text font at the bottom telling us where these countries are. The text font here is Futura Extra Bold, and it is the same font that was used in Classic Who through the late Jon Pertwee era and the beginning of Tom Baker's era. Die. In Spyfall, a satnav goes a bit rogue, telling the TARDIS team that they're going to die before getting the car to swivel off in all different directions to try and kill them. This is very reminiscent of, obviously, the Poison Sky and the Sontaran stratagem from Series 4. It's unclear whether this is an intentional Easter egg or just coincidence, but either way, it's there.
Is a man.
I've had an upgrade. Hi.
Stephen Fry appears in this episode, playing the character of C, which is kind of strange, because obviously we look back to the Husbands of Riversong, where Riversong actually said that she had married Stephen Fry at one point. Not the character, but the actor Stephen Fry. It's not the first time an actor who's played a character in Doctor Who has been mentioned in the show. John Hurt got mentioned in Torchwood, yet no one questioned his appearance in Day of the Doctor as the War Doctor. And even with that, the movie Alien, which John Hurt stars in, was also mentioned after he appeared in the show in Last Christmas. So yeah, bit of a strange combination, but it's not the first time Doctor Who's done this.
Unit, even Torchwood.
Unit and Torchwood get a name drop, despite being inactive and out of service, finally confirmed for both of them. They're mentioned, so they're still in the minds of either the people in the show, or the showrunners, or both, so who knows?
I mean, that's one very impressive legend he's put together.
Not impossible, though.
Alright, and the TARDIS team are discussing Daniel Barton with O. They talk about the possibility of the character being an alien. O passes this off as a load of rubbish because, well, Barton has a very advanced online profile. It's a very impressive legend, he says. He says it would be very unlikely for an alien to have created that sort of fascinating and in-depth legend of his history. Yaz then goes on to say, it's not impossible though, before O has a lovely shot of his face just smiling at her. That's obviously nothing too big, but if you consider that O eventually turns out to be the Master, looking at this scene with that new context, it's almost as if he knows. Referencing back to Series 3, where John Sims' Master had to kind of leak himself into history and create an impressive overall legend for himself of his entire life as Harold Saxton to be able to become Prime Minister. He's sort of smiling at himself here.
Master.
At the end of Spyfall Part 1, the Master reveals himself in a very similar looking and feeling scene, but probably the best reveal in years. It harks back to obviously Derek Jacobi's reveal back in Utopia, Missy's reveal in Dark Water, and John Sims' reveal in World Enough in Time. I still think this is probably one of the better ones. It holds up better than the previous two, probably not as much as Jacobi's because that was just unreal, but this one, it was still a surprise, unlike the previous two. I kind of feel like this was exciting and, you know, it's great. It is a nice harken back to those original sort of reveals as well.
Tissue compressions, classic. Wow.
Talking of harkening back, we also have tissue compression brought back, not only in the form of the man in the little box at the end of Spyfall Part 1, but we actually see the tissue compression eliminator in Part 2, shrinking people. It's fantastic. It harks back to Anthony Ainley's days, and obviously Roger Delgado's days as the Master as well. An exciting little prospect that it's always been a bit absent from New Who, and it's very exciting to have it back and a sort of main thing for this version of the Master. It is exciting, it is very classic, and I really, really like what they did with that. Jodie's Doctor refers back to the beat of 4 in the sort of Morse code thing. The beat of 4 obviously famously used for John Sims' Master, not only as his main Master theme of music, but also in the character, the sound of drums, the heartbeat of a Time Lord beating in his head. It's a lovely harken back to the Tennant era days of Doctor Who, and you know, I'm a massive nostalgic fan of that era. So when I saw this scene, I was just so excited and happy seeing that brought back. Even just for a little bit, even just a sort of one-off. It was very exciting, very atmospheric, just a very basic scene, but it worked so well.
Contact.
The Doctor also used contact, which hasn't been used for a long time in Classic Who. This is the last time we saw it, but contact is the sort of thing where Time Lords can communicate with each other by getting inside each other's heads, a sort of telepathy type thing. It's never been brought up in New Who, but it's been, you know, widely used across Classic Who every now and then. Famously, if you want to look at a Classic Who example, The Three Doctors is a great one for showing different versions of the Doctor using contact to sort of sync each other's minds up.
It's worse than Jodrell Bank.
Did I ever apologise for that?
No.
The Doctor and the Master have a small exchange talking about Jodrell Bank when they stand at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Jodrell Bank, and that sort of exchange is regarding Logopolis on Jodrell Bank, where the Master and the Fourth Doctor have a little bit of a confrontation before the Fourth Doctor falls to his death and the Master escapes.
What I keep telling you. Conspiracy.
At the end of Spyfall Part 2, Yaz's dad gets a little line about conspiracies, which harks back again to Arachnids in the UK, where he is very well known, I say very well known, as in his only character trait is talking about conspiracies, getting a little bit of a conspiracy nut.
But don't take it away, please don't take it away.
Reader.
The mind wipe is used again on the two historical figures, you know, specifically on Ada Lovelace, who actually does fight against the mind wipe. The mind wipe again previously used on companions such as Donna and almost Bill, but we didn't quite get there. However, the Doctor is very prominent in using it here, even though Ada Lovelace kind of rejects it and is like, no, I want to keep these memories. A little bit like both Bill and Donna.
Built on the lie of the timeless child.
The Timeless Child is brought up again, which links back to the Ghost Monument from Series 11. A little line which obviously will be explored later on in the series. We're not going to talk much more about the Timeless Child stuff because it's not really much of an Easter egg. It's just brought up here, and at the time of the episode coming out, that was an Easter egg.
I was born on a planet called Gallifrey, in the constellation of Kasterborous.
The Doctor talks to her companions about being a Time Lord, being from Gallifrey and the constellation of Kasterborous, matching very similarly the line from David Tennant in Voyage of the Damned, where he says a similar sort of speech in a little bit more of an epic fashion, but it's nice to see that a sort of version of that speech come back. Now talking about Orphan 55. Not really many Easter eggs here because it's not really too big of an episode, it's more standalone. However, there are a couple of little Easter eggs or a couple of little story points which are quite familiar.
Nosy Herald coupons. I'm hyphen with a 3. Your customer host here at Tranquility Spa.
The luxurious resort type thing on a sort of alien planet with a sort of dark underlying secret which turns out to be quite a alien threat. Very similar to that of Paradise Towers, the 7th Doctor episode.
This is Earth.
And the reveal of this sort of mysterious planet being Earth is also kind of harking back to that of the episode, or the story, The Mysterious Planet from Season 23 with Colin Baker, where a sort of desolate planet turns out to be a future version of Earth. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror.
Silurian blaster. Nasty, deadly thing. But here's
We get a Silurian gun right at the beginning. A lot of people predicted that this was just them reusing props, but it was actually referenced in the episode, talked about the fact that that actually was a Silurian gun. Stolen and somewhat adapted by the Skithra a little bit.
new technologies, new skyscrapers, more people getting rich quick and more poor people than ever before.
When the Doctor and the fam come into New York for the first time, the music that is played matches that of Rosa, which makes me think that every time we're going to get a big historical with a big sort of introduction scene into a new landscape, a new city, a new sort of area, we're going to get this music played. It matches the track Parks, Rosa Parks, and the track used in Series 12, I believe, it's called Big Fat Liar. Yeah, bit of a strange one, but it is. That's the track, and it matches that of Rosa Parks. Fugitive of the Jadoon. There's lots of little Easter eggs in this one, obviously to Ruth being towards the sort of the Doctor stuff. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. The first shot we get of Ruth is of her watch, you know, straight away. Time Lord, maybe a relation there, but you've also got the fact that the first chameleon circuit that we saw back in Series 3 was a little pocket watch, so it was a little bit of maybe some sort of slight indication on that. The next shot we get is a close-up of Ruth's head and her eyes with a sort of rainbow lens flare on one side of the screen. This lens flare could obviously be signifying the Doctor, Jodie's Doctor, with the sort of rainbow across her chest. Having that slight little implication there is quite interesting, but yeah, it could very easily relate to that of her being the Doctor.
Alright, Monday, do your worst.
When she looks into the mirror and says, "Monday, do your worst," the mirror is hexagon, similar to that of the hexagonal designs of the recent TARDISes. The windows of Ruth's house also match that of the TARDIS windows that we are familiar with, the sort of 3 on the bottom, 3 on the top, sort of pattern of 6 sort of small window panes, but it matches. We know the Doctor has lots of different languages that he or she can speak, and that they can interact with lots of different species and all that sort of thing. And we can see Ruth talking to ducks in the opening sequence. Very, very subtle, but, you know, it's there. Probably not intentional, but it's there.
That took me 9 weeks.
Language, humor, compensation for your weapon.
The Judoon scan and compensation and, you know, all that sort of stuff, very similarly taken from Smith and Jones. I'm sure you all noticed that. Very similar sort of patterns of things that they went through. There's a few new bits of technology from the Judoon, and there's a few new interesting parts to the Judoon, and I think they were done a little bit better in this than they were in Smith and Jones, so I'm quite happy with that. But yeah, a few callbacks, definitely.
You missed me, right?
Captain Jack also appears in this episode. There's no Easter egg there. He's in this episode, and Captain Jack's always a win. So let's just talk about it. There we go. There we go. The chameleon arc is obviously used towards the end of the episode as well, to signify the Doctor getting back into Ruth and Ruth becoming the Doctor, all that sort of thing. That harks again back to Series 3, where we last saw the chameleon arc with the 10th Doctor and the Master. Now on to Praxeus, another one with very little amounts of Easter eggs and callbacks, but there are a couple that I managed to pick up on. However, Praxeus to me was quite forgettable, so I may have missed quite a few.
Autons? No, it can't be Autons.
The Autons obviously got a name drop. That wasn't a big secret thing. That was very quite obvious when Jodie literally name dropped them. So yeah, that was in the episode, relating to obviously the plastic themes and all that sort of thing.
Yaz, how are you doing? Because we've literally got the most exciting rotting bird that I've ever seen.
And the Comdots also appeared. The Comdots were introduced in the Saranga Conundrum and reused again here. It's a little device that the companions and the Doctor use to communicate with each other over long distances.
You think this is some sort of alien colony?
I tried to look for references to sea devils, if anything, but the biggest stretch I could probably get was the underwater base had sort of a net lining on the wall, similar to that of what the sea devils used to wear in the classic series. But other than that, there's literally nothing. Talking about Can You Hear Me? We've got a few here that obviously a few you probably picked up on.
For a game, the toy maker would approve.
The toy maker would approve of Zellen's games in this dimension, according to Zellen. The toy maker obviously referencing the Celestial toy maker from the first Doctor's era in the story, The Celestial Toy Maker.
The Guardians have their power struggles.
The Guardians were also name dropped. They appeared in the Ribos Operation, the Armageddon Factor, Mordrin Undead, Terminus and Enlightenment.
The Eternals have their games.
The Eternals were also referenced, and they appeared in Enlightenment and Ghostlight, along with being referenced multiple times in New Who, but never making an actual appearance. Army of Ghosts was a notable mention of the Eternals, when the 10th Doctor's talking about the Void, he related it to the Eternals and back and forth, etc. There's also possible relations in terms of possible Eternals in New Who, from the Sarah Jane Adventures, the Trickster, and in Torchwood, Adam. Although those aren't confirmed, these possible Eternals that have recently appeared in Doctor Who. The Haunting of Villa Diodati.
Nice mention of Ada, though. Big fan of hers.
You know of my daughter?
Will do. Gorgeous brain.
The first reference we have is to Ada Lovelace, who obviously is Byron's daughter, I believe, and obviously 13 met Ada Lovelace in episode 2 of Series 12. There's a little callback, a slight little reference or acknowledgement of 13 actually meeting that character.
That is a lone Cyberman.
The Lone Cyberman appears in this story, which obviously relates back to Fugitive of the Judoon with Jack's warning. Again, not really an Easter egg, but it mentions Jack Harkness, and to me that's always a win.
Back. I will not lose anyone else to that.
The 13th Doctor, when talking about the Cybermen to her companion, says, "I will not lose anyone else to that." This could be a very obvious reference towards Bill, the previous companion before Yaz, Ryan and Graham, who obviously got turned into a Cyberman. Or it could also be a reference to any of the other companions and friends the Doctor's had over the years. regarding the Cybermen. Adric being a notable one. I think someone else on Twitter mentioned like Danny Pink, I guess. Not that the Doctor really ever connected with Danny Pink, but he did still turn into a Cyberman, so that's a very fair point to make.
Execute the host.
The lone Cyberman's costume is an interesting one. The head is a brand new design. The chest and right arm look as if they're from the Nightmare in Silver Cyberman. The left arm looks to be Mondasian, and the legs are very similar to that of the Cybus ones.
Because sometimes this team structure isn't flat. It's mountainous, with me at the summit, in the stratosphere, alone.
There's a line about flat team structure and how sometimes that is not so flat, and, you know, the Doctor is at the peak and it's mountainous and all that sort of thing. This links back to the Witchfinders and Fugitive of the Judoon, both of which have prominent focus on the ideas of a flat team structure and the fact that this era is more of a collaborative team effort rather than the Doctor doing everything.
This modern Prometheus.
Mary Shelley refers to the Lone Cyberman as a modern Prometheus, which is the tagline to her famous novel Frankenstein. Ascension of the Cybermen.
Has its time, and every empire falls.
We have the Cyber Wars, first of all. The Cyber Wars, briefly mentioned, it's sort of the end of the Cyber Wars, and there's been a few relations to that throughout Doctor Who's history, but, you know, most notably and recently, I suppose, will be Nightmare in Silver, which is supposed to take place after the Cyber Wars, after the Cybermen are extinct, as Jack describes in episode 5. And these sort of Nightmare in Silver Cybermen are meant to be futuristic and beyond the Cyber Wars. So that's a nice relation to bring the Cybermen back to basics with the whole Cybus design, the Cyber War design, and the Cyber Warrior design. But yeah, no, it's just a slight relation back through New Who, but you can track the Cyber Wars through Doctor Who history, basically. It goes back that far.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, sir.
In the sequences with Brendan, Brendan does get given the sort of service badge, a sort of Medal of Honor type thing, which is in the shape of a sort of clock, obviously linking to potentially a chameleon arc, which we'll talk about next. But obviously, it's a service badge, a sort of thing for working for the division. You've left the division, here, have a service medal. Similar to that of Lee from episode 5, who we presume is some sort of Gallifreyan or Time Lord who escaped with the Doctor, disguising themselves on Earth. Brendan had a mind wipe at the end of the sort of story, which is obviously implicating the fugitive division era of the Doctor getting turned back into a child and losing all of their memory of like their previous lives. Similar to that of what happened to the Master, Jacoby's Master, where he turned himself into a child on the course of the Silver Devastation, wiping his mind of all the things to do with the Master. I feel like this is what happened to the Doctor, just without the sort of actual, you know, without access to the actual chameleon arc. It didn't turn the Doctor human, it just turned him into a Time Lord child who would then grow up and be the Doctor, starting with William Hartnell's incarnation. This makes me believe that this mind wipe machine thing could in fact also be a chameleon arc, hence the sort of headpiece that Brendan seems to be wearing, and hence the special effects on the screaming and the sort of agony pain type thing that we connect it with, because obviously we look back at David Tennant's era, we saw him using it, and it had the same sort of effect on it. So yeah, could be a chameleon arc. Interesting theory. Now on to the last episode, The Timeless Children. There's quite a few here, back to more Gallifrey stuff, but starting with a bit of a poetry-based one.
Look upon my work, Doctor, and despair.
The Master opens with the line, "Look on my works, Doctor, and despair." This is a reference to the poem Ozymandias, which includes the line, "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair," which, funnily enough, is written by Percy Shelley.
The alleys where we'd hide from Barusa as we skipped classes. Barusa
gets a name drop mentioned by the Master. Barusa has been seen in Doctor Who before, mainly in the Five Doctors as the Lord President, who eventually does make himself immortal by turning himself into stone in Rassilon's chamber in the Death Zone. However, Barusa is also known to be a sort of tutor for the Master and the Doctor back in their early days on Gallifrey, back in the Academy.
The Panopticon. Assassinated presidents.
The Panopticon is referenced from The Deadly Assassin, as is the assassination of presidents, again linking to the Master and the Doctor in that story, The Deadly Assassin.
I was just playing, hacking the system. I got lost in there.
There's a reference to the Master hacking into the Matrix, which obviously could be a little wink and nudge towards Trial of a Time Lord.
Off robot, throw a stick in this universe, you'll hit a robot. I used to do that.
The Master uses the line, "Throw a stick in this universe and you'll hit a robot." I used to do that. This could be relating to, obviously, Chameleon from the 5th Doctor's era, that the Master made this sort of robot and sort of messed him about a little bit. Could be a reference to that, could be a comment on robot politics, who knows.
Show me the rest.
I'm not sure you can cope with much.
Show me the rest!
When the Master and the Doctor are in the Matrix, they stand on a sort of hill with a sort of plinth in the middle of it. That plinth and that location was used in the 13th Doctor reveal. Before Jodie Whittaker was revealed as the Doctor, there was a little teaser where little different objects in the world would have 13 on it to sort of hype up the reveal of 13th Doctor. And the final shot of that is this very plinth with the TARDIS key on top of it disappearing. And obviously we know that it will reappear in Jodie's hand in the reveal. But yeah, same plinth, same location, so that's, yeah, a nice little callback to that.
You Cybermaster's Doctor, all born from you, but led by me.
The hybrid doesn't get a direct name drop or mention, but it's an interesting theory to pummel together the idea of the hybrid from Series 9. Two warrior races melded together to stand in the ruins of Gallifrey. That is basically exactly what the Cybermasters are. They are Time Lords and Cybermen, two warrior races melded together and standing in the ruins of Gallifrey. It matches the theory exactly, and it works, so if you want to put that in your head, canon, go for it. So I count that as a sort of somewhat Easter egg, if you will. The end of time is referenced in the speech that the Master does towards the end of the episode when he says,
For Gallifrey, the Time Lords, the end of the universe itself!
Matching Timothy Dalton's line from the very same story, The End of Time, where he says, For Gallifrey, for victory, for the end of time itself. When the 13th Doctor breaks out of the Matrix, we see the Morbius Doctors, and if you don't know what the Morbius Doctors are, watch The Brain of Morbius. Basically, it's one of those stories that stuck out in fans' minds for many, many years. A Tom Baker story where he hooks himself up to a machine, and we see different faces of the Doctor. We see John Pertwee, we see Patrick Troughton, we see William Hartnell, and then we see various other versions of the Doctor that we've never seen before. People always got really annoyed with this because it implied that William Hartnell was never the first Doctor, and it's sort of been contradicted since in terms of canon, but Chibnall finally brought this back and decided to go, well, if we're going to introduce pre-Hartnell regenerations of the Doctor, why not bring in the Morbius Doctors? So that's what he did. So these are the Morbius Doctors. Easter egg. Back in time. Classic Who. Yay.
I think a worse place is to spend eternity.
When the Doctor leaves the TARDIS that she stole from Gallifrey on the Cyber War planet, she says, I can think of worse places to spend eternity. Someone on Twitter, and I think someone separate on YouTube, actually did mention that this could be a slight reference to Heaven Sent. However, it's a real stretch, but, you know, I thought I'd put it in anyway.
What?
The episode ends with the Doctor doing a sort of very David Tennant-esque performance, saying the words what over and over again. Jodie's last few lines of dialogue are just the word what repeated, very similar to that of David Tennant's era, where he used to also have cliffhangers where he'd be like, what, you all know that. You've seen Doctor Who, you know how it works. And finally, there is a shot of the prison, the Judoon prison, presumably, that Jodie gets left in at the end of the episode, floating in space. And a lot of people have theorised that this is actually a modern version of Sharda, the prison used in the story, Sharda, a Time Lord, kind of half Time Lord ran prison type thing. The Judoon were working for the Division in Fugitive of the Judoon, so if they are arresting the Doctor for the same thing, it could make total sense if that is Sharda, and it would be a fantastic Easter egg and reference if that is the case, but we'll have to wait and see in Revolution of the Daleks. Anyway, that is basically it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed making it, actually. There's been quite a few things I didn't pick up on first time that I was fascinated to go back and look through. If you did enjoy this video, leave a like, because, you know, it makes sense. Comment below for any more suggestions for Doctor Who related videos in the future. Subscribe with notifications on if you haven't already. We're getting closer and closer to 16,000 subscribers, and that is insane. So if we hit there soon, that would be very exciting and wonderful and brilliant, and I'd really, really highly appreciate it. Coming soon on the channel, I've got a few things that I want to kind of make. I'm going to do a video on the Series 10 soundtrack, which again hasn't been released, and a lot of people are very confused by that, so I thought I'd make one on that. I'm going to do a Doctor Who collection video with DVDs and box sets and figures and stuff. I'm going to have a video on what I would do if I ran Jodie Whittaker's era of Doctor Who, a TARDIS exterior ranking, complete history of the Doctor, eventually a reaction to Torchwood Miracle Days finale, and also an adaptation of the wonderful short story written by Pete McTeague, Press Play. But that's all to look forward to in the future, so please subscribe if you want to see, well, any if not all of that. And yeah, I will see you soon. I've got a Patreon page if you want to support the channel and get early access content. Some of those videos will be popping up over the next few weeks early, then yeah, and it's only $1 a month, so if you want to jump on that and see videos before anyone else does, then that's the place to go. You also get credits in the description and at the end of my videos. I've got Twitter, I've got Instagram, both of those are linked in the description below, so if you are interested, go check those out, go and follow me on there. And yes, that's pretty much it from me. I will see you all next time. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.